Hi, I'm Heather Westwell, and he's Fergus Woods Dunlop.
Hello!
We are new old friends, and this is Chapter 10 of Crimes Against Christmas, a comedy audio drama for Advent.
Things are starting to unravel on the Isle of Liechtenstein. Peter Artridge thought he was investigating the case of the Fabergé bauble, but now, with Don Criminay falling from the roof, he's stranded on an island with two mysterious deaths. Things are going to get a lot worse before long.
If you're enjoying this, please do subscribe to the podcast or the YouTube channel, and or tell your friends and social media channels. If you're really enjoying it, you can go to our website, newoldfriends.co.uk, where there is an opportunity to donate to the company. Chapter 10. Bored to Death.
He must have leapt off the roof, said Vickers, almost to himself, still gawking at the tangle of limbs protruding at odd angles from the shrubbery. With visible effort, he dragged his eyes from the spectacle and looked at me with fear etched across his face and whispered, terror lacing his lilting Irish accent. "Artridge, Criminay leaped from the roof to his death. He killed Betty and Drummer himself. I was right. Oh my. I should have, shouldn't I? Have I done something?" "Calm down, Father. There's nothing you could have done," I reassured him with a hand on his shoulder, and could feel him shaking beneath my touch. "Oh, I need a drink. Where did that maid go? She was here earlier. I'll go and fetch the butler."
"Tell him to bring vodka for me."
The princess spoke absent-mindedly. She was tilting her head as though trying to work out exactly how the various constituent parts now decorating the bush could once have come together to form a functional human. The Duke had left the window and sat himself in a chair, hands upon his knees, and placed his own order with Vickers.
"Judging from the smell of burning toast, Butler's in the kitchen. Get him to bring a glass of the good Scotch for me."
"I think I'll join you." It was early, but if everyone else was having a snifter, it would have been rude not to. I positioned myself on a chair next to the Duke, who seemed put out I might horn in on his whiskey.
"What? Very well, Vickers. Get Butler to bring me my good Scotch, and Artridge here will have the special guests reserve. Make sure you say I'm to get my Scotch and keep the special guests reserves for Artridge. He'll know what you mean."
Vickers bumbled out, repeating the order to himself, accepting the role of waiter without question. I think the poor chap was just happy to get out of the room and away from the window. The Duke seemed almost preternaturally calm about another dead body turning up in unusual circumstances. The special guests reserve. Very generous. Thank you. I didn't trust the Duke's attitude. It's all very well to be calm in a crisis, but this was taking it a bit far. Perhaps it was a front, and underneath the hoary brute was as shocked as the rest of us. I adopt a kindly tone to let him know he had the right to let out some emotion. "Must have been a terrible shock, Your Grace. Criminay just leaped off the roof, did he?"
"Into my bloody rose bush. It bloody is a bloody rose bush now. It's got bits of bloody blood all over its bloody buds."
I was wrong. The old cove was as cold as ice. I was struck by a ridiculous notion. Is there a way he could have orchestrated this? Had Criminay pressed him too hard on the illegal items in the collection, and Liechtenstein thrown him from the roof? Well, that seemed pretty unlikely. I had heard the scream and hurried down pretty sharpish, and the haggard old man was already in situ in the parlour. But then again, I had to throw some clothes on and briefly stop to speak with Michelle. Even so, with the speed the Duke moves, I still very much doubted he'd be able to make it down from the roof in less time than I took to get from my room. Also, why would they have been meeting on the roof in the first place? No, I think the fact is that Duke Liechtenstein just genuinely didn't care about Criminay's death. He stood slowly and pressed his hips forward, his back making a horrendous grinding sound as he did so. There was an ornate cane leaning against the arm of his chair, which he picked up and leaned onto heavily. I couldn't recall seeing him use a cane yesterday. Perhaps the strain was getting to him after all. Or maybe this was clever subterfuge to highlight his frailty and throw any suspicious minds off. He noticed me noticing his walking aid.
"I've bloody joint pain. Had it since I was a whippersnapper, but it's worse now. Plays up something chronic in the mornings."
Or maybe his arthritis was just worse in the mornings. I was rattled and seeing sinister ploys everywhere. It may have been early, but I needed that drink. The Duke stretched out his back and announced,
"I'm going to take a walk around the grounds to try and loosen up."
I didn't know what to make of the Duke's behaviour in the light of Criminet's death, but letting him wander alone outside didn't seem wise in any case. With respect, your lordship, are you sure that's a good idea?
It's worked in the past.
Not taking exercise, I said with a patient smile. Walking the grounds on your own?
What are you blathering on about? I don't need a chaperone, it's just a bit of stiffness. I'm not about to fall and break my bloody hip like some doddery old dear. You want to wind your neck in, Artridge.
Apologies, Your Grace, but that isn't what I meant either.
Then what did you bloody mean? Stop going around the houses when I could be walking round my house. Just say what you mean, man.
It was incredible to me that one so small could be so unutterably vexing. I half wanted to wring his noble neck. I think I actually felt my hands twitch at the thought of it. What I mean, Your Grace, is... I bit off each word with gritted teeth. I was determined to hang on to my manners, a white-knuckle grip on the rope as I scaled the mountain of decorum, hauling myself hand over hand from the crevasse of irritation. Drummer has not been found.
What of it?
Well, what if Criminet didn't leap off the roof, but was pushed? Princess Fuctifino had left her calculations at the window and was perched languidly on a nearby chair. Her morning attire was as chic as yesterday's evening wear and again unadorned by any jewellery save the necklace Criminet had so coveted. A pair of wide-legged, high-waisted crimson trousers nipped in at the waist and gave way to a beautifully cut but simple black button-down blouse with gold detailing on the buttons and sleeves. Her hair was swept up into a headscarf, also crimson. The contrast of the black and the red, and the combination of exquisite tailoring and peasant-style headscarf was very striking and very Russian. She looked quintessentially of her country and regal too. I don't know how long she'd been following the conversation between the Duke and I, but she got straight to the heart of the matter, saving me from any further explanations for the old man.
Artridge, you are thinking maybe it is the American who did this? That he has killed the cook and now the rude and slimy Italian man?
Well, why didn't you just bloody say that? Blustered Richtenstein. That makes about as much sense as anything else. So, what's the story then? Drummer had a go at Betty, she turned him down, so he offed her and ran. But before he made good his escape, what? Are we saying he must have spotted Criminet, who, having wandered down to the kitchen himself, would have seen the whole thing? So then Drummer hid somewhere for the night and somehow coaxed the Italian bugger up to the roof. Probably not too hard. He struck me as the grubby sort who'd risk anything for money. Then the Yank gave him a lesson in how not to fly.
The princess chuckled a little.
How not to fly? Yes, very good. He did not fly. He fell.
Well, something like that, yes. Look, I'm not saying that's what I think happened, rather just that we should consider the possibility, don't you think? My high-born companions murmured their agreement, and the Duke sat back down on his chair. Even though my explanation appeared to have convinced them, I wasn't so sure I'd convinced myself. I was still far from certain Drummer had any motive to kill Betty. The crime of passion angle just didn't convince. When he'd spoken of his wife, I saw genuine emotion there, and while I know there are plenty of chaps down the club who speak of their wives as angels even as they play the devil with some pretty young thing, I couldn't shake a feeling that Drummer wasn't like that. Supposing I did allow myself to believe that Drummer, for whatever reason, had killed Betty, luring Criminet to the roof and disposing of a witness by tossing him over the ramparts felt wrong. For the story to play out the way the Duke had said, Drummer would have had to successfully hidden himself away overnight despite a wide-ranging search, then, assuming his hiding place was probably somewhere out on the island, managed to sneak back into the house, locate Criminet without detection, then convince him to talk on the roof. If he was possessed of such remarkable stealth, why not just kill Criminet while he slept, rather than creating what could plausibly be suicide? What's the end game there? He might have successfully removed a witness and secured a place to hide out until the boat returns, but what then? Attempt to lay the blame for Betty's murder at Criminet's feet? But how would he explain his bizarre and continued absence? My musings were interrupted by Lord de Planus entering, red in the face and slightly out of breath. He was fully dressed in a three-piece tweed suit, but he had misbuttoned his waistcoat and his tie had been hastily tied over one point of his collar. He scanned the room and asked where Vickers was with some urgency. His father-in-law was not impressed.
What do you need the bloody priest for in such a hurry? Bit late for Criminet's last rites.
What? No, it's not that.
De Planus turned to me.
Have you seen him, the priest?
He just left to find Butler and ask him to bring us all a stiff drink. Rather a shock to start the day, I'm afraid. Here, sit down, your lordship. I pulled out a chair for him to avail himself of, and as the lord sat, I sorted his collar for him.
Thank you, yes, good. In that case, everybody's accounted for. Yes, a stiff drink would do us all the world of good, I'm sure.
Duplantis looked relieved and exhaled, but his father-in-law was far from comforted by the perfunctory head count.
It's not bloody everyone accounted for, is it, you imbecile? Where's my daughter for a start?
Duplantis bristled in his chair, straightened his back and pulled down his waistcoat in a display of pique, which was rather undercut by noticing his mistake with the buttons and taking a moment to fiddle with them. To his credit, he did manage to hang on to a certain level of huff, which he duly levelled at the Duke.
Actually, I have just left my wife. We were in our room, together, when we heard the scream. I got dressed quickly and told her to lock the door behind me and not let anyone in.
Fine. But what about that young idiot and his simpering piece?
You are meaning Mr. Turtle. What a silly name he has.
Which felt a bit rich coming from someone called Fuctifino. At the mention of Turtle, Lord Duplantis' face registered a combination of shock and embarrassment.
Oh, yes, I see. I must have forgotten about him and Miss Malawan. Has anyone seen them?
And don't worry, I had a brief conversation with Michelle as I made my way here. I cut in before unnecessary panic could breed. They're both fine, but like the lady of the house have locked themselves in their room for now. I realised as I said this that I hadn't actually seen Turtle with my own eyes, but I kept that knowledge to myself. No need to ruffle feathers unduly with the birds already in such a flap because a fox has taken 2 of the clutch. I made a mental list of people's whereabouts at the time of Criminet's scream, with a word to myself to jot it into my notebook at the next opportunity. Duke Richtenstein could surely not have made it from the roof to the parlour before me. Princess Fuctifino and Father Vickers. They're younger and marginally sprightlier than Richtenstein, but I felt comfortable discounting them for the same reason. Missy the maid. Father Vickers claimed she'd been in the parlour that morning, prior to Criminet plummeting past the window. Michelle. There was absolutely no way she could have got from the roof to her room in time without the gift of flight. Turtle. I hadn't actually seen him in the room, so I suppose it is possible Michelle was giving him an alibi. Butler the butler. The Duke had pointed out that the smell of burning toast coming from the kitchen would have been Butler making breakfast, but no one had actually seen him. It is quite possible he could have set the toast on a low heat, allowing him time to get to the roof and back, giving him an olfactory alibi. There was definitely something off about Butler, but what? Lord and Lady Duplantis. I'd not seen or heard anything from Lady Duplantis outside of her husband's account, which didn't necessarily line up. He said he'd got dressed in a hurry, which was evident in his dishevelled appearance this morning, and yet he was still significantly slower to arrive at the parlour than I formulated one potential explanation for this. He found out about his wife and Criminet's exploits, had an understandable altercation with the Italian and threw him to his death, but in the course of the scuffle, perhaps Criminet damaged the outfit Duplantis was wearing, forcing a quick change on his part and a delay to his appearance downstairs. In this scenario, was it in fact possible that Lady Duplantis had also paid a high price for her infidelity and was now locked dead in her room? The timeline might work, but why the roof? And Duplantis' vengeful force of nature overpowering Criminet didn't fit in with the picture of the shuffling, browbeaten man I'd met. Even now, he was obsequiously toadying up to Princess Fuctifino.
So, Princess, I do hope you're being looked after. My wife and I are so honoured to have you as a guest here.
The holy man is bringing me vodka.
Good, good. I know this situation isn't ideal, but I do hope you won't hold it against us. I assure you, normally our house parties are much more civilised affairs. No, death. Perhaps we can host you once again after all this is dealt with. I'm sure Goosey would just love that.
I do not know. I think not.
Duplantis looked absolutely crestfallen. Despite everything, I almost felt sorry for him. I could tell he thought his wife was going to hold him responsible for the party's failures, regardless.
Because of all the death? I do understand. But maybe I can convince you to reconsider. Betty did order in some truly excellent caviar before she, is beluga, obviously, and I think you'll find the vodka top-notch too.
Good. The vodka will be good. Frankly, I'm a little bored.
At this, the whole room stopped and stared at the princess. My jaw was positively on the floor, and even Duke Richtenstein looked shocked. Bored, Your Highness?
Bloody bored?
Bored?
Yes, bored.
She looked at us, her face as impassive as ever.
It is a little boring. I was invited. No, convinced to come to a party. I was promised a good time. So far, all I have done is stand around while everyone is talking about dead people. Or I have to go to look for other people. Where is the singing and the dancing and the good times?
Lord Duplantis couldn't believe what he was hearing. Duke Richtenstein was at a total loss for words, and I couldn't see a way to save the situation. We were like the three wise monkeys in the face of the princess's eastern iciness, and it was in our stunned silence that Butler and Vickers found us when they entered with a tray of drinks. Only Fucktofino spoke.
At least the vodka is now here.
So, what do you think's going on? Who is your prime suspect? There will be another episode tomorrow with more murder and mayhem. See you then!
See you then!